Well, I would say this is a this is looking at the question of publication bias or selective publication of clinical trials about antipsychotic medications. And then the question is how much effect is that having on how well the drugs work? And this is a follow-up to our previous study about antidepressants, in which we found fairly sizable contrast between what was in the published literature and what the FDA had to say about these very same drugs. Now, so in this study with antipsychotics, we found some differences that were actually much smaller than there were with the antidepressants. But so the drugs were better at beating placebo or a sugar pill than the antidepressants are. But nevertheless, there are some things going on, some publication bias, some putting lipstick on a pig, you might say, of making things look a bit better, things that, some bad news being covered up or swept under the rug, one might say, and some unpublished studies as well. So that is going on even with this drug class that works more consistently than the antidepressants. I guess what's missing, one of the things that we found missing in several cases is how the drugs stack up compared to each other. They're competitors, so sometimes there was a new drug that was significantly worse than a competing drug that might have been much, much cheaper, but you wouldn't know that from the journal article, either from the fact that maybe the article was published and they just didn't mention how they compared, or in one case they just simply didn't publish the article, even though that drug beat placebo. And you would think, well, it was a positive study in terms of, as far as the FDA was concerned, because that's what the FDA relies on for approving drugs, is superiority to placebo. But on the other hand, there was the bad news that the drug lost out to this cheaper competitor, and perhaps that was a reason that it wasn't published. There's two publication bias. I think the two main subtypes of that are simply not publishing an article at all. That's one thing. We'll call it non-publication. And the other is spin, for lack of a better word. It's the fancy name for that is outcome reporting bias. So, so the not publishing part has been somewhat addressed already using some registries have been set up and mandated by law so that before the studies are undertaken, not only do they tell the FDA about it, but a study has to be put in a registry that, for instance, clinicaltrials.gov, where anyone can look up and say, I'm interested in this drug. What are all the studies that were done in the past so many years about this? So that, and you can wonder about, well, where's this study that they said that they were going to do, and where's the publication that goes? Now, if it's not there, however, too bad. You don't. If there's no law that says, at least no law so far, that says that study has to be published. Now they are putting results in clinicaltrials.gov. So that's some improvement on that aspect of it. Long ways to go still. So that's the non-publication part. Now for the other part, the outcome reporting bias, excuse me, or spin, again for lack of a better word. So how can that be handled? I think a good way to handle that would be to go back to the concept of the protocol that we talked about, the study blueprint, and asking reviewers to, well, first of all, the journals should and should require that the protocol be submitted along with the study, with the manuscript that the authors, when they send in the manuscript, that should also include the protocol. There are some journals that that have that requirement, but still quite few of them. Now, when the protocol comes in, there's nothing to keep the reviewer necessarily from ignoring the protocol and thinking perhaps, oh, this isn't that important. I'm very hurried here. I got lots of other pressures. I'm doing this for free, which is true. That reviewers do this out of the goodness of their hearts, usually. And they could skip the protocol and go right to the manuscript and not appreciating the importance of the protocol. So I think that I would recommend a system in which the protocol is reviewed first before the results are looked at. So the reviewer should look at the protocol and say, is this, first of all, is this an interesting question? Is this something that we even want to cover in this journal, or is this a really silly, insignificant question that doesn't even deserve to be published? And that could be a weeding out thing right there. But I guess what I'm getting at more in the purposes of the publication bias is the methods, and they look at the way the methods are laid out in the protocol, what they plan to do, and they say, is this good science? Is it a good question? And are there methods for answering the question? Are they good? Are they solid? Or are they kind of half-baked? And they could either reject or accept on that basis. So make a preliminary decision about the article based upon the original methods before they looked at the data, and those being the ones in the protocol. And then once they made that preliminary decision, at a later point, so they say, okay, the authors, you passed the first test, now there's a second part to it, second stage, and then they submit the results, and then the results, the methods, as should match up with the methods in the original study protocol. And if there's a mismatch, that would be either there should be a good explanation for why they differ, or it could be grounds for rejection right there, because then you know that some shenanigans have gone on.